Hello, everyone. I just wanted to get on and talk a little bit more about the Kovalev-Alvarez fight. Now that it's been more than 24 hours after the fight, the adrenaline rush of just seeing such a good knockout has worn off, and a little bit of depression has set in because I am such a big Kovalev fan, and I don't think people just going on Fight News and other boxing websites, and I don't take much of the comments seriously ever. But there seems to be this disrespect for Kovalev, like he's some type of bum. And this is the catch-22, the trade-off in boxing, where you got a guy like Kovalev, right, who's riding high, knocking everybody out, and instead of being like a guy like Adonis Stevenson, who just sits in Canada, avoids any tough challenge. I mean, because let's face it, Alvarez would have knocked out Stevenson years ago. And then we could have possibly had Kovalev, or even Andre Ward might have stuck around to fight Alvarez. We could have had this a couple years ago. But instead, Kovalev mans up, fights Andre Ward. And let's face it, Andre Ward is a terrible style matchup for Kovalev. And really a terrible style matchup for just about anybody, but especially for a guy like Kovalev. I mean, Kovalev in some ways is made to order for Andre Ward. I mean, slow feet, okay, a big puncher, but Ward, being the great master boxer he is and technician, can neutralize that power as long as you don't get caught, and just blast it out of there. But despite the fact that Andre Ward was just a terrible matchup, Kovalev tests himself, takes that fight. And let's even go back further than that. Let's just briefly talk about the Hopkins fight, right? Hopkins was old as hell, and Joe Smith knocking out Hopkins a year later after that fight kind of cheapens the Kovalev win over Hopkins. But still, a ton of people were picking Hopkins to beat Kovalev. And even though I thought Kovalev would win that fight, I thought Hopkins had a good chance. And so did most other people. Because in some ways, Kovalev was made to order for Hopkins. The same way similar opponents that Hopkins fought were, like, Kelly Pavlik and some other guys. Now, I think Kovalev's on a different level than Kelly Pavlik, but you get my point. And going on to the Ward fight, Kovalev tests himself. He tries to be great. He fights a guy who, Floyd's on and off retirements. Ward was most likely number one pound for pound in terms of active fighters at that time. Kovalev takes the fight with Ward, all right? In my opinion, in the opinion of most people, beat Ward. And even, and I got no problem with anybody that thought Ward won the fight, but here's the bottom line to that. If you give Andre Ward everything, every benefit of the doubt in every round, the only way you can have him winning is 114, 113. Okay? So, in my mind, I believe I had a 115, 112 Kovalev, and I thought he won the fight. I feel like people that are giving Ward everything, later on in the fight, Kovalev did tire, but even then, I thought he won a couple of late rounds. Even tired, just gritting it out, just grinding it out, And that decision, from what I remember seeing that night, and just from the general comments and just the boxing scene, probably 75 to 80% of people thought Kovalev won. I was in a football league at the time, online, like gaming football. And I was in a group, and the majority of the people in this group were black, and all of them thought Kovalev won the fight. So, yeah, I can see a way Ward won the fight, but I think the general consensus was that Kovalev won that fight with Andre Ward the first time. So he took a fight versus one of the best fighters we've seen in the last 20, 30 years. Okay, Ward probably would have to be somewhere around the top 10 of that list. He takes that fight, beats Ward in the majority of most people's mind, my mind especially. Then, afterwards, has to fight Ward again, more on Ward's terms, has all this turmoil in his camp, all right? Loses that fight. Look, I know I was disappointed in his performance that night, but even in the second fight, Kovalev did. He got off to a good start. He was winning rounds. I thought he was up 5-2 at the time of the stoppage. I can see how somebody could have it a little bit closer. I can't see how Ward was winning at the time of the stoppage. But the point is that Kovalev won the majority of the rounds versus Ward, even though I do think he did kind of quit in that fight. But even then, I mean, look, in a perfect world, you'd never like to see a fighter quit, right? I mean, you never like to see a fighter quit, but to me, it was almost more of a Street Fighter move than like a Hector Camacho, type of quit move. It was Hector Camacho Jr. I'm sorry, I don't mean to apologize to Macho. I don't mean to disrespect the real Camacho like that, but Camacho Jr., like when he quit versus Leija, it wasn't that to me. It was more of a Roberto Duran, Sugar Ray Leonard 2, or even Tyson in the second fight with Holyfield, where he just didn't want to be in there from the beginning. The camp was a disaster. Everything into the buildup of the fight. And the fact that Ward was beating his ass didn't hurt either. But he just didn't want to be in there. And then when Ward hurt him, he just basically just kneeled over and said he was done. So, look, I hold that against Kovalev. And yes, technically I do feel he quit. But, coming back, okay, he had the 2 tune-up fights. Every fighter has those kind of tune-up fights after a couple of tough fights like that versus Ward. And it's not like Kovalev wasn't fighting everybody and trying to fight everybody. I mean, Kovalev, even if Kovalev would have beat Alvarez, was willing to fight Dimitri Bivol, and the Bivol, yeah, like the last couple fights, I myself have got on and said that I don't think Bivol's as good as HBO's trying to make him look. But you look at Bivol versus Chilimba, the first 4 rounds, Kellerman's like, oh, wow, Dimitri Bivol, nobody in light heavyweight's better than this. Like, this is amazing. And then by the end of the fight, they're just kind of like, yeah, he's probably not ready for, Kovalev or the winner of the Kovalev-Alvarez fight yet. They need to give him some more time. He's a little green. So it's like, Kovalev was willing to fight him, even though everybody thinks he's some monster. Kovalev was willing to fight Arthur Beterbiev, but Beterbiev decided to go off and fight in the Olympics and fight bums, and he's been managed and promoted to a title belt, one of them paper belts. And you look at Stevenson, he was trying to make that fight years ago, doing everything he could to make that fight. And then, he fights Eleider Alvarez, who was a dangerous fight. I was worried about that fight. Yeah, I picked Kovalev to win. I'm a Kovalev fan. I mean, I almost looked like a genius there in the 4th when he was batting him around. But Alvarez showed resolve, fought through it, and, ended up knocking Kovalev out. Impressive performance. Alvarez showed he's the real deal. And I just feel like, though, now Kovalev has become some type of a joke. He was always overrated. No, man. Kovalev, if he would have took the Adonis Stevenson route to fighting, and he's a draw. I mean, he filled up Atlantic City. Alvarez didn't fill up Atlantic City. Kovalev filled up Atlantic City after 2 losses to Ward, because people know what Kovalev brings, And what really inspired me to make this video talking more about this fight was I'm on YouTube and a video pops up where Sergey Kovalev's in the hospital yesterday or today after the knockout loss versus Alvarez. And he's apologizing to his fans, saying how sorry he is that he got caught, and he just thanks everybody for the support. And I'm like, oh my goodness, man, we're most likely losing such a great fighter from the sport. Somebody who really cares, about their career, about the fans, somebody who cares about making big fights. And I think we need to just appreciate what we had, because you look around boxing and not everybody's interested in making big fights. I mean, I can go up and down the list. Now, some of these tournaments that they're putting together are cool. Like the cruiserweight tournament, the tournament at 140, the bantamweight tournament, yes, and the super middleweight tournament that's coming to a finale. So, yes, it's changing a little bit, but still, you got fighters like Keith Thurman, who haven't fought anybody, who's been getting close decisions and who's been inactive. You got Joshua, who doesn't seem to want to make the fight with Wilder, and so Wilder, for a while, I thought, okay, maybe Wilder was the one fighting bums, fighting in Alabama, not fighting anybody, but after fighting Ortiz and now scheduling to fight Fury, it's not Wilder who's not trying to make big fights, it's Joshua, So, and, you can just go on. You got Stevenson at 175. And let's be honest, you got GGG at 160, who fought nobody, who's seen as this pound-for-pound monster, and this people kept calling him the most avoided fighter, when it looked to me like he went out of his way to avoid every challenge and just kept waiting on Canelo to come up from a smaller weight where he would be the bigger fighter. And Canelo, I mean, damn, I don't even think Canelo's that great. I mean, Mayweather beat him much wider than the scorecards were, I thought. I mean, I thought Lara beat Canelo. Canelo, yeah, Canelo's good, but he's not. I don't know. I just feel like GGG's gotten a pass for fighting bums. Let's put it this way. GGG has the worst resume of any fighter who has been seen top 3 pound for pound that I've ever seen in my time watching boxing. People were saying this guy was pound for pound 1, 2, or 3, and he hadn't fought anyone, And you got Kovalev fighting everyone he can fight. And he didn't have to take the Alvarez fight. I mean, God, he could have fought so many other guys. Alvarez, this was supposed to be Stevenson's mandatory, And Kovalev was about to fight Alvarez and then fight Bivol. And then who knows who he would have fought. Would he move up to cruiserweight? Now, and then, yesterday in my post-fight, I said Kovalev was done. And maybe I was reacting a little too in the moment. I mean, look, it's boxing. Alvarez is 34. Kovalev's 35. Kovalev had a long amateur background, turned pro a little later than normal, but I wouldn't say he's taken a beating. That was the first knockout he's ever suffered. That was really a brutal, debilitating knockout. I mean, Ward stopped him, but that wasn't like, it was more on body shots and stuff. But Kovalev, even though he's slipping, definitely, he's definitely not in his prime anymore. I'm not going to say he's done anymore. Look, he has a rematch clause with Alvarez. He's probably going to take it. And he had Alvarez hurt in the 4th round. And he was winning the fight. I mean, I had it 4-2 when he got knocked out in the 7th. Letterman had it 5-1. The judges had Kovalev way up. I believe they had it. 2 of them had it 5-1. The other one had it 4-2. So, Kovalev's not done. Even though I think at this point, if he does fight Alvarez again, you have to assume that Alvarez will beat him again just because of what we just saw. But it's certainly not out of the realm of possibility that Kovalev can beat Alvarez. And if he beats Alvarez in the rematch, then he's certainly not done. He's back to being the best light heavyweight in the world. And then, and there's still plenty of big fights out there, whether it be Bivol, whether it be Beterbiev, or however many champions the WBA decides to, create in that division this month or that month. So I just wanted to come on a little bit and just talk more about the fight. And just, we just don't get fighters like Kovalev very often that are willing to fight everybody, willing to fight people that are bad stylistic matchups for him all the time, willing to risk it all. And guy's gotten a bad rap. And I think part of that is because for one, he beat Hopkins. And even though Hopkins was never the most popular fighter, the older Hopkins got, I think the more sentimental and popular Hopkins got. So when Kovalev beat Hopkins, yeah, it was an elite fighter beating up a 48-year-old guy. So I think people soured on Kovalev a little bit there. And then he had the racial comments or whatever where people, but man, I don't know. I don't put much stock into that. It's a fight. Kovalev brings a lot of emotion into fights. He wants to win. He has a certain disdain for his opponents. We've seen other fighters do this. Ricardo Mayorga, Roberto Duran. I mean, there's been plenty of fighters who have said things like that. It doesn't mean he's a racist. He's not, I don't put much stock into that. He was a great action fighter. He is. He's a blood and guts warrior. I mean, he certainly, you might have been able to say he quit versus Ward, but he certainly didn't quit versus Alvarez. I mean, he got knocked the F out. You know what I'm saying? Like, he didn't quit at all. He kept getting up. Even after the second time where he was just absolutely done and didn't know where he was. I mean, he got up. He got knocked right back down, but, I don't think he has a heart problem. It's just with his style, and the way he was beating people so easily for so long that he's not used to taking punches like that in fights, So I definitely think he is done as an elite fighter, but still, he's not completely done yet. I think I was maybe overreacting a little bit when I said that. And we'll see how the Alvarez rematch goes. I think Alvarez deserves a chance to go and have a defense in Canada before the rematch. I think Kovalev should probably take the rest of the year off. I mean, he's been through a lot. He can reassess things. All this stuff with John David Jackson. Okay, he got that over with. He got this new coach. And you could see little subtle signs of improvement, right? But it's hard to change a 35-year-old fighter when you rely on your power. And the stamina issues going forward are something that you can't really fix those, Like, clearly he just has stamina issues. It didn't really show up in the Hopkins fight, but because Hopkins was old and wasn't really physically strong at that point and couldn't really keep pressure on him to wear him out. So Kovalev was able to just dictate pace and tempo, and he had Hopkins hurt and kind of reeling most of the fight. But the stamina issues ain't going to get any better, and his punch resistance is probably only going to get worse, and his balance and his footwork will only continue to decline. But still, looking at the light heavyweight rankings, how many guys would really beat him? Would Bivol beat Kovalev? I don't know. I'm not sure about that. Bivol is similar to Kovalev. In my mind, Bivol, the last 2 fights I've seen him, yeah, he's gangbusters for 3 to 5 rounds. And then after that, he's kind of just another guy. He turns into a light, fleety, little flighty, just trying to get to the bell type of fighter. I mean, I don't know. I don't see it in Bivol that would make me 100% certain he would have beat Kovalev that Alvarez beat. And, Alvarez, though, yeah, I'm just disqualifying Stevenson completely from the division. I mean, the guy's a bum, but until I don't know. It's just disgusting. And I'm glad that HBO has no mercy when they talk about Stevenson, because clearly Alvarez would have beat him years ago. There's a reason why Stevenson didn't want to fight Kovalev. There's a reason why Stevenson didn't want to fight Alvarez. There's a reason why Stevenson didn't want to fight Andre Ward. There's a reason why Stevenson doesn't want to fight anybody. I mean, Badu Jack, and did he even beat Badu Jack? I don't know, So, forget Stevenson. But how many light heavyweights out there really would beat Kovalev? Alvarez? I don't know. Could Better Beef beat Kovalev? I don't know. We haven't ever seen Better Beef in a tough fight. He's fought nothing but bums. And he's been promoted and managed to a championship. Brilliantly, I might add, but still. Could Better Beef beat Kovalev? I don't know. Can Better Beef take a punch? Is Better Beef just a sensation? I got a feeling that Better Beef is going to get exposed sooner rather than later. So when I look at the landscape like that, Kovalev's still a top 3 light heavyweight. Actually, you know what? Kovalev's still a top 2 light heavyweight, because the only person you can really definitively rank ahead of him right now is Alvarez, because of what Alvarez just did to him. But the rematch, Kovalev should take the rest of the year off. I know Kathy Duva was talking about December 8th. No, that's too soon after a knockout like that. I think in February or March of next year, let Alvarez go. He's been waiting a long time for a title shot. Stevenson ran from him for years, so let him go to Canada. Let him have a defense against, a fringe guy at light heavyweight. Let him get a good defense under his belt, and then let's see it again. For Kovalev, at this point in his career, with everybody he's been in against, I don't even really think he needs a tune-up fight. I mean, yeah, if you put him in there with a guy like Sabransky or Mikhailov or something, he's going to knock him out. It's not going to do anything for him at this point. Just put him right back in there with Alvarez, and let's see what happens. I don't think Kovalev is as mentally fragile as people think he is just because of the Ward fight. I think there's everything factored in, and the fact that Andre Ward is such a great fighter, I don't think Kovalev is that mentally fragile, though. So I think just give him a few months off. Maybe, I hope, I don't know if he's going to switch trainers again or not. I've seen some good things from him. His left hook looked better than maybe ever. I mean, yeah, he's getting caught with some jabs, maybe a little too much, and then his head snapped back. But he was winning the fight. He was going to the body more intelligently. Alvarez, too. Alvarez was getting worn down himself. After the first 2 rounds, I did give rounds 3 through 6 to Kovalev. And Alvarez didn't exactly look like the prettiest picture in the 7th round either. But obviously, once he nailed him with that big right hand, that gave him the confidence and the juice to go ahead and finish the job. But Alvarez was getting worn down himself. He was breathing heavy in between rounds. And who knows what would happen if they fought again, Alvarez isn't a big puncher per se, but he does obviously hit hard. The Butte knockout, like I mentioned yesterday, the Kovalev knockout, he has enough power to get it done, but there's no guarantee he's just going to blast Kovalev out of there again. So let's see the rematch. Let's see what happens before I completely write off Kovalev. He's been a good enough champion, great enough champion. He deserves that right. And to get a rematch again, and we'll see what happens. And especially with Bivol, like even HBO, the announcers were basically saying, yeah, he's not ready, so they're not going to see that. You know, Stevenson's not going to fight nobody. Better be, yeah, he's probably just going to keep lining up, you know, mandatories and fighting bums. So what other fight is there out there right now at light heavyweight? I mean, especially since, you know, like if the Gale or somebody moves up, maybe, you know, but there's just no other real fight out there right now besides Kovalev-Alvarez too. So let's see it, you know, and then we'll get a more definitive look. Even though that knockout was pretty damn definitive, still, if Kovalev gets knocked out again or loses again, then we can officially write him off. But I was probably a little bit quick to jump the gun yesterday, writing him off immediately after that fight. And I just wanted to talk, like I said, and reflect about what a great champion he was, and how there's certain guys that are willing and ready to fight anybody, you know. And they're going to go out there and they're going to make the biggest fights and fight the biggest fights and take all challenges and really test themselves. But it seems like boxing fans, once they do this, they sour on these fighters. Like, oh, they lost, they weren't as good. Or, oh, they lost, they got exposed. When really, no, you know, they just fighting good fighters. They're going to take some losses, you know. So I just had to say that. I had to get that off my chest, man. Mourning a little bit from Kovalev's loss. Like I said, he's one of my favorite fighters. And hurt to see your favorite fighters get knocked out like that. So always react a little bit in the moment. But 24 hours is a good time period to sit back and reflect. And that's my thoughts. Let me know if you guys agree or disagree. And let me see if you guys agree with my point about, you know, everybody wants fighters to make big fights, but then when they do and they lose, they just get casted aside like trash. Whereas if you got a guy like a Stevenson or a Thurman or, you know, some other fighters that I've listed who just sit back and repeatedly fight bums or take fights, you know, once a year. I'm not going to accuse Thurman of fighting bums, but, you know, the guy doesn't barely fight and he gets these close decisions and people still mention him at 147, and it's like, yeah, but he's not making big fights. You know, he doesn't even fight anymore. So I don't know. So just let me know if you guys agree on my point that it seems like boxing fans just want people to just knock out bums forever. When they really step up and make big fights and lose, they just get thrown aside like garbage, you know, like oh, he's a bum, oh, he's overrated. I don't know. I'm just seeing a lot of that right now about Kovalev, and I just feel like he was too great of a champion to deserve that, you know, especially after taking a big challenge like Alvarez, losing, but in a great fight and showing heart trying to get up. You know, it is what it is, man. It's a boxing game. All right, I'm going to stop now. It's 22 minutes long, way too long. All right, but thanks for watching. Later.